Enhanced federal unemployment benefits have expired. In fact, they expired over the weekend on Labor Day specifically, which means that millions of Americans will not get the expanded benefits even as coronavirus is surging, even as businesses are not operating at full capacity, even as millions of Americans are still without jobs. Now, to remind you all, the added benefits, federal benefits, amounted to an additional $300 per week on top of the state unemployment benefits. But the expiration date, reached on Monday, means that 7.5 million people will lose their benefits entirely, and another 3 million will lose the $300 weekly supplement. Now, what has Biden said? Well, as you can imagine, there hasn't been much pushback from Biden or any urgency from Biden to provide an extension of these benefits. In fact, Biden has called on certain states, those with high unemployment rates and a willingness to continue aid to jobless workers, to use state relief funds from the March law, the COVID relief bill, to help the long-term unemployed. So far, no state, of course, has said it plans to do so. Roughly half of the states, nearly all of them led by Republican governors, moved to cut off benefits early on their own. Biden and his administration did not fight them. In fact, the Biden administration has now pivoted toward passing his agenda, both the bipartisan infrastructure bill and allegedly the reconciliation budget bill that includes all of the provisions that would actually help keep American families afloat. Now, to be quite honest with you, maybe he's fighting behind the scenes, but I personally haven't seen much of a fight from the Biden administration in regard to the reconciliation bill. But nonetheless, this is not a good day for Americans who are still searching for work. And of course, there's a huge misconception in regard to what those unemployment benefits did to the alleged labor shortage that we're experiencing. So Cenk, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, so this affects a ton of people. 7.5 million people get cut off now. Another 3 million lose an extra $300 they were able to get. Another 3 million had lost it earlier, a couple of weeks ago or some time ago. So combined, that's nearly 14 million Americans that are losing benefits. So this is going to have a massive impact. But look, the Biden administration is clear. They're not looking to extend it at all. They're not even pretending on this one. A lot of times they, oh golly gee, we would love to continue the eviction moratorium, but all of our real estate donors say we can't. I mean, the courts say we can't, probably, maybe, if we help them. Okay, so in this one, they're not even trying. They're like, no, we're gonna end this. We don't want you to extend it. By the way, so the red states are the ones that took away the unemployment benefits earlier, and Biden didn't object. But now the blue states are not petitioning to use them either. They're not using the extensions at all. So everyone agrees, including Democratic governors, et cetera. So, and by the way, at some point, I would agree with, well, okay, maybe we should pare things back when we get back to normal and healthy. Do we look like we're back to normal and healthy?
Nope.
So that's the giant but here. Okay, there's two aspects of it. One, the Delta variant really threw us for a loop, including myself. Like, I thought we were past it. I was ecstatic. I was even going indoors in some places without masks, being vaccinated, et cetera. But now here comes a giant surge, and now we're back to masked up and affecting businesses and their ability to hire. The unemployment numbers are not good recently. And so the second but is these business owners, as Anna's about to show you, that are beginning to say finally what's true. It turns out if you pay enough unemployment insurance, people can squeak by, and then they realize how terrible their jobs were. And then you have to actually pay them a living wage to get them to show up to work. And man, businesses do not want to do that. And in fact, there's one business owner flat out admitting it, but he says he represents a lot of people. Fox News says he represents a lot of people. And in the business community, unfortunately, it's true. He's like, damn it, I don't want to pay living wages. We had him exactly where we wanted him, barely hanging on by a thread.
Right, I mean, in a situation where workers had absolutely no leverage, but with unemployment benefits, they have a little bit of leverage, but there is still a misconception about what motivates workers to avoid going back to some of the jobs they had. I'll get to that in detail in just a moment, but first, I bring you Jason Kramer, the owner of the Doo-Wop Drive-In, who admits that that, all right, I guess I'm just gonna have to pay people a living wage, whereas before I was paying them starvation wages.
Here's the thing that people get mistaken because of what we stand for. We're okay for giving people assistance that need it. This was way too much money for way too long. The issue is the money that was given out was for help, not to stay home and do nothing. I couldn't even get people to walk in the door to even explain to them, listen, I'm willing to compromise and give you a living wage, give you a working wage, not just minimum wage, but I wasn't even given the opportunity to help people get jobs. It is strictly about capitalism. I took the risk. I put my life on the line. I put everything, I worked hard, but I was willing to even share my wealth, the minimum that we were making with the employees, but I couldn't get people even in the door. You have all these statistics saying, well, all these millions of people want jobs. Where are they at? Where were they?
No, I love that, because it's like, I wasn't given the opportunity to pay my workers a living wage. I couldn't even get them through that. It's interesting because there's already data showing that for the employers who were willing to up the wages of workers during the pandemic, they had a far easier time getting their workers to come back. Now, there are other factors at play that actually have a much larger influence on workers' decisions to stay home, and I'll get to that in just a second. But Cenk, I just love the admission there.
Yeah.
Like, I would have paid them a living wage, I just didn't get the opportunity.
Yeah, so there's two things that I love about that. One is the lies, and two is the truth. So first the lies. He's like, I would have given it to them, but they wouldn't take it. They wouldn't walk in the door. Yeah, I was in Colorado a couple of months back, and that's when things were coming back into business before the Delta variant. And the fast food chains had big signs in front, $15 an hour. I saw one that said $18 an hour. Okay, and guess what? They were functioning, they were open because people saw those signs and they walked in because $18 an hour sounded pretty damn good. Okay?
Strange how that works, Cenk. Weird.
Yeah. Meanwhile, this poor guy, he doesn't know how to put a sign in front of his establishment.
He didn't get an opportunity.
He didn't get an opportunity to put up a sign.
He worked so hard.
He
put everything on the line.
My dad was a local businessman. He was a pretty good businessman. You know what he would do? He'd put an ad in the paper. You could have done that. Oh, I didn't get a chance. Okay, I'm pretty sure you did. But look at you. You have a chance to say it on Fox News here. Tell people what you're paying. And I guarantee you they'll show up in droves if it's a good number, right? So that's the lies. The truth, though, is even more amazing. He's like, I was willing to compromise and pay them a living wage. Oh, were you? Well, are you not merciful? I didn't know you were that much of a humanitarian. So apparently before you weren't willing to compromise and pay them a living wage. Okay, and he views that to be a compromise. Come on, I'm even letting you live off my wages and you're still complaining? Jesus. And then the second admission, I was even willing to share my wealth. Again, quite the humanitarian you are.
Right.
Well, you see, when people work with you and you all make the money together, yes, in a manner of speaking, you should share the wealth, and in a way that will motivate them to come to work and maybe even create an atmosphere where you like each other, right? And that you have a functioning business. It doesn't mean they're gonna make more than you. It doesn't mean you're not gonna make plenty. But yes, you're supposed to share enough for people to show up to work. That's the bare minimum. And he views it as like I'm such a good guy. I'll even pay you guys minimum wage and share my wealth a little bit. No, that's not what makes you a good guy.
So let's talk about why workers aren't going back to work, right? Because I think that there's this, and this always happens, the smearing of American workers as lazy, as bums, as people who just want to sit on the couch, when in reality, you look at productivity in this country, before the pandemic, and Americans work the longest hours, incredibly hard workers, incredibly productive, but we're just all bums. Okay, great. But evidence so far suggests that programs are playing at most a limited role in keeping people out of the workforce. States that ended the benefits early, for example, meaning the unemployment benefits, have seen little, if any, pickup in hiring relative to the rest of the country. So one of the main things that gets cited is childcare. Because remember, the coronavirus pandemic, whether we want to believe it or not, is still raging. So what ends up happening to kids who are supposed to go back to school? Well, they go back to school, there's an outbreak of coronavirus, and a bunch of students have to quarantine, meaning that their parents need to be home to take care of their children, right? Childcare is incredibly expensive. Most people can't afford it. So there's a cost-benefit analysis that happens in every household. It ends up being that the mother is better off staying at home with the kids instead of working all day to just pay all of her earnings toward childcare, right? So data released by the Labor Department showed that the states that cut benefits have experienced job growth similar to, and perhaps slightly slower than, growth in states that retained the benefits. That was true even in the leisure and hospitality sector, where businesses have been particularly vocal in their complaints about the benefits. So that's the thing. I mean, people in this country get no support at all. So if we're not gonna get help with childcare, how are you gonna expect workers who make meager wages to show up to work when all of their wages then get spent on childcare? It makes no sense. It makes no sense. This system is broken. And to smear workers as like these lazy bums is so disgusting, when in reality, you've got greedy businesses that don't want to pay a living wage. You have the government that's unwilling to do anything about childcare and the lack of a social safety net. And this is the situation that we end up in, period. This is the way it works.
Yeah, see, that's why I thought the Family Paid Leave Act, et cetera, would be easier to pass, because at some point corporations have to realize if we don't help women with, and not just women, of course, but families, predominantly women still today, with childcare, they're not going to come to work. And then, by the way, it's not just that, hey, I don't have enough employees. What that'll do is it lowers the supply of workers, which drives up the prices. And so they don't want that either. So it's a perfect opportunity to unload that on the government. And so that's why it was easily put into the COVID relief bills. But I believe it's in the $3.5 trillion reconciliation
Correct.
bill.
It is.
And so that should be a way to sweeten the pot for corporations who actually, of course, run our government. But still, that one has trouble passing. And you would think that that should be a layup for them. But still to this day, they think, well, I mean, I'm gonna have to pay a part of that cost. And look at that, the guy on Fox News really there almost negotiating with the country, right? How little can we pay you for you to show up? That's what they're trying to find, your bottom. And
yeah,
and
he's not the only one though.
Yeah, and no, the whole country is,
yes,
right? All of the politicians are. He just happens to be symbolic. He's actually a small business owner, so not a great symbol. The real symbol should be the giant corporations that hire fast food workers, et cetera. And they're the ones that methodically try to keep your wages to scientifically as low as they possibly can pay, and for you to still be able to survive. Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR, so those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.